Sorry, boy, but his captain's got to teach his men what happens to those what crossing.
Captain's got to teach stuff.
So why did that guy just yell Rosh? Good morning from the Batcave. It's about 4 a.m. on Tuesday, March 1st, and what you're watching here is the first battle scene from the King Arthur movie starring Keira Knightley. And we want to ask ourselves a question: why did this guy right here beat his chest and yell Rosh? He actually does this multiple times in the movie. He yells Rosh. So he just killed a bunch of guys, and he comes in and he yells Rosh, or Rosh, Rosh. Okay, does this multiple times. Another time he does it when they're getting ready to ride into battle. He yells Rosh. And why is that? And the answer is because he's from Ukraine. He's a Sarmatian. And if you follow this movie and you're not getting your etymology from the hack scholar Joel Richardson, who is a Jewish and Arab shill. That's what he is. He is not a scholar. He made up his theory based on 9/11, and then he's just been putting together post hoc rationalizations for it ever since. Okay, that's what he is. The Sarmatians. If you watch this movie, you watch the beginning of it. It talks about how the Sarmatians came from Ukraine. The Romans defeat them, and in this King Arthur movie, King Arthur's Knights of the Round, King Arthur himself is a Roman, and these Sarmatian knights are actually drafted by the Roman Empire and then sent over to Britain to fight. This is around the time of Hadrian's Wall, and they're fighting the Woads, the Celt. Basically, these are Celtic tribes that are fighting against the Romans in about the middle north of England, near Hadrian's Wall. And these knights are basically led by a Roman knight, and they're drafted, and they got to fight here for years, and they eventually get to go home back to Sarmatia. They're draftees, okay? And as you can see, this map, this is 300 BC to 400 AD. So this is a 300 or a 700 year span of time. This is where the Sarmatians dwell, and of course you can see this as almost an exact map of modern Ukraine. Okay, and the main people right in the middle of it are the Sarmatians. Kiev, where the fighting's going on with the Russians, are right here. Okay, so he yells Rosh, and the answer is well, they do that is because the Kievan Rus are where Russia gets its name from, and they descended from the Sarmatians, who yell Rosh as their battle cry because they're the descendants of a forefather who's apparently called Rosh. Now, just like Gog is not in the Table of Nations, but we know Gog is basically a son of Magog. He has to be a descendant of Magog. Rosh apparently is a descendant of Ripheon, and it could be a later great king. But what you want to do is when you don't be like these people who resort to Bible maps. You don't know where the scholars got these names from. Okay, and this is Joel Richardson's big argument. Let's look at the scholars' map. So we're going to see. We're going to look at these Table of Nations maps in the Bible, and of course, every one of these Table of Nations maps is different. This one that I found is probably one of the better ones. But if you look at these nations or if you look at these Table of Nations maps and you look at them up close, every single one of them is going to differ. They're going to differ drastically. And what you're going to see here is the initial dispersion of nations is going to have everybody in the Middle East. And that's what they believe. These people believe everybody was dispersed just in the Middle East, and then eventually they spread out from there. Well, to a limited degree, they probably were, because if you think about the number of people that there were, you just do the math based on the Bible. Okay, so if there are 70 Jews that went into, or 70 Israelites who go into Egypt, and there's approximately 2 million that come out over the course of about 200, I think it's like 250 years or 225 years. It takes 225 years for 70 people to multiply to 2 million people. Well, I'm sorry, so 225 years. So 225 years after the flood, well, we know the original table of nations were 70 descendants. So we're looking at maybe 300 years after the flood is around the time where you start to get Abraham coming out. And so when the Bible stories start to take place with Abraham here, you're looking at about the same amount of time as the Jews were in Egypt, which means that 70 table of nations, probably, first of all, if you do the math, and we know these people started being born right after the flood started, and their descendants started being born like 30 years later. So within 50 years, you've got that 70. Within 300 years, which takes you into around the time of Abraham, you've got probably about 2 million people. So the whole earth is populated by about 2 million people, okay? And yeah, these 2 million people wouldn't need to spread out over the whole world, okay? They would be fine just being, spread out here. But the question is, if there's only 2 million of them, why are they even spread this far? Why would they even be spread down here? Like, see, you've got Jobab right here, okay? By the way, this is Job, okay? This dispersion is pretty arbitrary, and you're going to find different maps for almost every map you look at. And let's look at a few more of them. See, this one's probably more accurate. This one has Jobab in the north, and this is actually more accurate because this is Joktan. I'm sorry, Joktan is the father of Jobab. Jobab's his youngest kid. It has our fax head way down here, which, if you know who our fax head is he's the forefather of the Babylonians. So why is he down here? Okay, the Medes is right. Elamites is Persia. It should be over here. And of course, then it has the Hittites here. Well, these are the Persian tribes, and this is actually right. Lud is the forefather of Lydia. And why do these people think Gog came from Turkey? And this is very simple. Some scholar in the 1960s finds this king named, this is an ancient Lydian king, Gyges of Lydia. And so, oh, there's a G and a G. He must be Gog. Okay. The problem is Lydia is a Semitic tribe. And we know Gog is a descendant of Magog, which, see, all these are wrong. Like this says the Ashkenaz is the Scythians. Ashkenaz is not the Scythians. Magog is the Scythians. Ashkenaz is the predecessor of the Germans. Togarmah is the predecessor of the Turks, but they migrated over here in the, for the love of Jesus. The Turks migrated over here in like the 2nd millennium AD. They're not going to get here for 5,000 years after this. This is really bad. Gomer is actually over here. He's the forefather of the Armenians. And Javan's the Greeks. Kittim is originally was Cyprus, and they eventually migrate to Rome. But every one of these maps are different. And so you have to think for yourself. And you can't just go, well, the Bible map says, see, here's this one's got Ashkenaz right here. Gomer's in the right place. The Medes are in the right place. But then it's got Togarmah right here. Like, why? Why is Togarmah right here? Meshach and Tubal right here. Magog right here. And of course, if Magog's right here, then where's the Lydians? Where's the Greeks that populate this area? It says, well, they're just in the islands. These guys pushed them south. Well, maybe at some point in history you pushed them south. But you don't look at these maps. You look for etymological and archaeological evidence of these people being here. So if you're saying Riphath is here and Magog is here, show me cities named Magog. It should be easy. Show me cities named Magog. Show me cities named Riphath. Why is it putting all these people here? And they're like, well, these are the sons of the Japhethites. Yeah, but why would they go here? So you need to understand. If you go to the Book of Jubilees, which was written around the time of the Maccabees, it records oral Jewish tradition, which a lot of the Pharisees Pharisees and Sadducees and stuff would agree to this oral tradition. It tells you, it says, and it came to pass in the beginning of the 23rd Jubilee that they divided the earth into 3 parts for Shem, Ham, and Japheth, according to the inheritance of the earth in the first year of the second week. Now remember, This was written within about 200 years of Ezekiel being written, okay? So this is what the Jews believe. You have a Septuagint, you have a table of nations, and this is what the Jews believed around that time. This was written by a Levitical priest. So it says, it came to pass in the beginning of the 23rd Jubilee that they divided the earth into 3 parts for Shem, Ham, and Japheth, according to the inheritance of each, in the first year of the first week, when one of us who had been sent was with them. And he called his sons, and they drew nigh to him. And their children, he divided the earth in lots, which his 3 sons were to take possession. And they reached forth their hands and took the writing out of the bosom of Noah their father, and came forth the writing of Shem's lot, the middle of the earth. So Shem gets the Middle East, okay? Which he would take as an inheritance for himself and his sons, and for generations of eternity, from the middle of the range of Rapha, from the mouth of the water of the river Tina. And his portion goes towards the west through the midst of the river, and extended till the water of Abises, of which this water goes forth and pours into the sea of Ma'at, and the river floweth to the Great Sea. And all that is towards the north is Japheth, and all that is towards the south belongeth to Shem. And he extended it, and it reached to Carasso, and this is the bosom of the tongue, which looks towards the south. So all these names have changed, but what he's basically telling them is that he gets the Middle East. And basically, if you can imagine, he gets the Middle East from basically southern Turkey down to the Indian Ocean, and out to the Mediterranean Sea, and down the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. And then it says, and his portion extended along the Great Sea, and extended in a straight line till it reached the west, and the tongue that looked toward the south. For this sea is named the tongue of the Egyptian sea. Well, what is he talking about here? Well, the Egyptian sea looks like a forked serpent's tongue. Okay? And this is the Gulf of Aqaba and the Gulf of Suez on the Red Sea. And so this would be like considered the dragon's tongue, and that's what it looked like. Now you got to remember, Noah was 600 years old before the flood. He had access to maps of the earth. The earth probably had a population of 1 to 2 billion in Noah's day. Okay, yes, they would have spread abroad. They would have mapped the earth in Noah's day. These people all lived to be 1,000. There's no way they were scared of the water or scared of the oceans or anything. They mapped the whole world. No one knew what the world looked like, okay? And so he knows how big the population is going to get. He knows how long it's going to take because he's 600 years old, okay? The earth is about 1,600 years old in Noah's day, but no one knows how fast people multiply. And so he divides the whole world to his kids, okay? Then it's going to say how, it says, and it turns toward the south, and the mouth of the Great Sea, and the shore of its rivers extends to Afra, and extended till it reached the waters of the river Gihon, and the south of the waters of Gihon to the banks of this river, and extended towards the east until it reaches the Garden of Eden. See, they knew right where the Garden of Eden was, okay? And to the south thereof, and to the east of the whole land of Eden, and the southeast, and it turneth to the east, and proceedeth, till it reached the east of the mountain named Rapha, and it descended to the bank of the mouth of the river Tina. And descended to the bank of the mouth of the river Tina. And this came forth by lot to Shem and his sons, that they should possess it forever and ever to his generations. And Noah rejoiced that this portion came forth for Shem and his sons. And he remembered that he had all spoken with his mouth of prophecy. For he said, may the Lord God of Shem, blessed be the Lord God of Shem, and may the Lord dwell in the dwelling of Shem. Okay, so they actually drew this by lots from Noah. And Noah had prophesied that Shem would basically, God would dwell with Shem. Okay, so he's prophesying that the Messiah is going to come from Shem. And Shem happens to be in the middle, in between Ham and Japheth. And that came by lots. Okay, now again, this is oral tradition. You guys can be skeptical of this, but this is what the Jews believed 200 years after, at least this Levitical priest believed this 200 years after Ezekiel was written. Okay. And he goes on and he talks about basically how Mount Sinai and Egypt, Mount Sinai, which is in Arabia, and Mount Zion, which is in Palestine or Israel, and the Garden of Eden, which is in Iraq, were all holy to God, and all of that was given to the descendants of Shem. And of course, it eventually goes to the Arabians, to the Babylonians, and to Israel. Okay, and then And it basically says how he gave them the land of all the way out to India, which would have originally been populated by Persians, the sons of Peres, which is a Semitic tribe, and the Assyrians, which are a Semitic tribe. Okay, that was the original population. It eventually gets populated by tribes from Canaan. So the Sine are going to go there, and tribes from Cush. There's eventually you're going to see a Kushan Empire there because that's where Cush actually migrated himself and was buried. So he basically, his descendants populated from what today is Sudan all the way up into the Hindu Kush. Okay. So it says Japheth he's going to get the portion beyond the river Tina to the outflow of the waters and extended northeasterly to the whole region of Gog. And look at this. Northeasterly to the whole region of Gog. This is in 200 BC. They know where Gog is. So he's saying Japheth came forth from the river Tina. So let's say where the river Tina is. And this is in Wikipedia, and the river Tina is the Don River. And the Don River is right here in the Ukraine. It's the Dnieper. It's where they're fighting right now. So he's literally, this is in the book of Jubilees, 200 years after Ezekiel's written, okay? It's written in about 160 BC. I'm sorry, Ezekiel's probably written about 500 BC. So it's about 400 years. So this is 400 years later, okay? And this is the book of Jubilees. And he says he gives them the river Tina, which is their name for the Don River back then. So that's the Dnieper in the Ukraine, northeast to the whole land of Gog. Well, where is Gog? Gog is, this is the far end of it. Goguryeo. Okay? Now this Goguryeo, if you see this, Goguryeo vassals, okay? You have the Gawk Turks, the Mongols, which was an ancient name for the Mongols. The names keep transliterating. The Mongols, the Magyars, as some would call them, or the Magog is, you have Gawk Turks, that's a mixture of Gog and the Turks, and Goguryeo, that's Gog's land, okay? And see, if you see this other map up here, it says this Xianbi or Jianbi. These are vassal states of the Goguryeo, okay? So the Goguryeo, he's literally telling them from Ukraine to Gog. That's what's in the book of Jubilees, okay? So from Ukraine to the northeast, let's look at the map of the world. And you have this all over the place. North Korea is called Goguryeo. You have tons of maps of this, okay? This is the 5th century AD. Eventually, Westerners come in and they just take the last part of Goguryeo and they take the Goryeo and translate it into Korea. Because Ka and Ga sound a lot alike. And Westerners came in and they said, oh, Korea. And so they changed it to a K there. But you see right here, even in the Gawk Turks, it's transliterated to a K by the Turkish people, okay? So these are a mixture of they're probably Turks under the dominion of Gog, and probably the prominent ones are married into Gog, okay? But again, where are all these people? And the answer is they're across Russia. So remember, he gives them to the Dnieper River right down here. Let's look at this on a bigger map. He gives them to the Danube. This is the Gawk Turk Khanate, okay? The Mongols were calling, listen, before Genghis Khan, they were always calling their kingdoms Khanates, okay? Khan means king. I mean, look at it, Kog. Kog is king, okay? There's the K and the G at the end. And you see all of Russia. Remember, up here, this is all ice. Okay, in ancient times, there was an ice age. All this is all ice. The habitable portions, this is everything above China, everything above the Stan countries, because down here would have been the Turks. Excuse me, down here would have been the Turks. Here would have been the Persians. And China would have been populated by Sine and descendants of Kush, probably. And so that's where you're going to get all your Tibetans and everything like that. But up here, this is the Gawk Turks, okay? These are Turks under the dominion of Gog, who's a Mongolian tribe, okay? and it's called a Khanate because that's what the Mongols called a kingdom, a Khanate. Okay, so again, this is before Genghis Khan, but before them you had the Huns, you had the Scythians. All these people are the Huns descended from the Hun River, which is in Korea. Okay, and they would move down here, and as they migrate down, they would intermingle. The Turks and the Mongols were known for intermingling with each other. And they would move down because remember, they're cousins. Okay, if you go to the original Table of Nations in Genesis chapter 10, you see the sons of Gomer, Ashkenaz, that's the Germans, and that's why the Ashkenazi Jews, the Jews that inhabited Eastern Europe, call themselves Ashkenazi Jews because they mixed with the Germans. Okay, Rifat is the Russians. It's the Riphean Mountains, and Tagarma, that's the Turk. Okay, so those are the sons of the eldest, but Magog is their uncle. So Gomer would have inherited the area around the Ark. His uncle Magog would have inherited this far northern region. Okay, and so these other people, since obviously he's the second oldest, he's more prominent than them, these were his nephews, would migrate to Germany, Russia, and the Stan countries, the Turkmenistan countries, okay? And eventually those Turks would migrate back into Turkey, but that's not going to be for thousands of years. The Turks' migration into, I can't believe how ignorant these guys are of history. The Turks are always out here, where the Stan countries are. And the original Turks, if you can see this map, would extend from, notice this is Manchuria, Mongolia, the Altai Mountains, Western Steppe, to Kazakhstan. They're going to extend through the whole area of where the Mongols are. So the Turks and the Mongols are going to be there together. They're not going to be smushed in here. Where this guy has Magog here, that's actually where the Kingdom of Lydia is. But, so this is bizarre that this Wikipedia article is based on this book called Lust, and this these books that were written about demons and stuff. But you got to remember, this idea was popularized by Chuck Missler, I think in the 90s, that Gog is not an actual person. Gog is actually like a spiritual leader. The problem is Chuck Missler didn't know that there's a land named Goguryeo next to Mongolia, which is Gog and Magog, okay? But you go to the Book of Jubilees, and it says, so from the river Tina, from the Don River to the north, to the outflow of its waters, and extended northeasterly to the whole region of Gog. This is in the Book of Jubilees. And to all the country thereof. So even in the days of, this is 200 BC, Gog apparently ruled over the land from North Korea all throughout what is today modern Russia. And it extends northeasterly in the north and extended to the mountains of Kelt, towards the north, towards the Sea of Mauk, and it goes as far as the east of Gedir in the region of the waters of the sea. It extended until it approached the west of Farah, and returned towards Apharag, and extended to the waters of the Sea of Maat. It extended it extended to the region of the river Tina in northeasterly direction until it approached the boundary of its waters towards the mountain Rapha. Okay, so what is Rapha? Well, remember, Riphath is Noah's son. That's Gomer is Japheth's eldest son, and Riphath is his second son. So Ashkenaz is the Germans. Riphath is where the mountain Rapha is going to get, and it becomes the Riphean Mountains. And it eventually gets translated to the Urals, and that's where the Russians are. So just like you don't have a Gog here, but we know that Gog is the son of Magog, and he eventually has a big empire. Rosh is the son of Riphath, and he eventually has, let's look where the Riphean Mountains are. This is an ancient Greek map. They called Africa Libya. Europe they called Europa after the tale of Europa who gets kidnapped by Zeus. And they apparently called the East Asia. Okay? And so you see Nineveh, Assyria, Babylon, Thebes. You see these Egyptian cities. And then you see the Scythians up here. And where are they, the Scythians? Ukraine. Where are the Sarmatians? Lower Russia. That would be the area of Rostov-on-Don, above Georgia. And you see this is the Riphean Mountains, and it says in Greco-Roman geography, the Riphean Mountains, also called Riphean, were a supposed mountain range located somewhere in the far north of Eurasia. The location of the Ripheans, as described in the most classical geographers, corresponds roughly with the Volga region of modern-day Russia. So the ancient Greco-Romans believed these Riphean people. Remember, Riphath was a son of Gomer, and the Greco-Romans would have been descendants of Javan, who was the forefather of the Greeks and the Romans. And the Volga River goes from all the way up from almost north to St. Petersburg, and this is where the Vikings would have come from. So the Russians and the Vikings are all related. The Russians are actually Vikings. And the Riphean Mountains, so you see Moscow up here, and the Volga just goes all through Russia, all the way down to the Black Sea. So literally you see the Russians, or the Ripheans, they're literally, Riphean somehow gets transliterated to Russians. Rosh sounds like it could have been a king of theirs. But you notice this Sarmatian guy who dwelt right here, he uses the battle cry Rosh. Well, why? And the reason is because there's a family called the Rus, and it's going to be transliterated by some to Rosh, and they had a kingdom called the Kievan Rus because their headquarters was Kiev. It's modern-day Ukraine. So when Russians say they have a claim on Ukraine, they're not lying. If you read any ancient Russian history, Russia basically became a kingdom around 900. It was the Rus or the Roshians, and you still have that name in Belarus and Russia. Belarus literally just means white Rosh, white Russians. That was the center of the Belarusian kingdom, and you see how they ruled Kiev. The Sarmatians would have been right here, which are also a Russian tribe. But any ancient history will tell you the Rus or the Rosh is where Kiev is where Russia actually came from, and then the Muscovites, who they're probably married into. I don't exactly remember this history. It's been years since I read it. You even have Russian historians who claim that Meshech is Moshkoy is how they pronounce it, is where Moscow comes from, and the Moshkoy are listed by the Assyrians as Meshech. So the Moshkoy is Meshech, who founded Moscow. So you literally have Japheth, and notice where they are. See, the Japhethites were never at the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel, Babylon was the world capital because Nimrod and the Cushites took over all the trade, but they mostly conquered some Semites. And so it was the center of the world. It was the world capital, but everybody wasn't there. Most of Japheth's kids, after Nimrod started getting strong, migrated out of the area into the north. So in Ezekiel's day, none of them lived there. None of them lived in Turkey in Ezekiel's day. Okay, they get this from the supposed King Gyges of Lydia, but Lydia is but this is where this whole idea that Magog comes from Lydia is. Remember, Lydia is Lud, who is a Semitic tribe. If you go look at the Semites, it says Shem is the father of Eber. That's where the Hebrews come from. Japheth, the brother of Japheth the elder. So Japheth is his older brother, and it says to him children are born. And those children are Elam, that's the father of the Persians. Asher, the father of the Arcadians. Arphaxad, that's the Babylonians. Lyd, that's the Lydian. And Aram, that is the Syrians. So you see where they all are. You have literally, there's the Lydians, there's Assyria, there's Elam, there's Cush, there's Arphaxad, there's Canaan. The only tribe of the Japhethites that was down in this region was the Madai, and that's because they pushed down into this region around the Caspian Sea. They would have surrounded the Caspian Sea, and the Elamites were originally down here in the Persian Gulf. So they wouldn't have been fighting with each other until they eventually became, Elam and Madai eventually became the Medo-Persian Empire. Kush, you see, they spread from here to here and basically up into the Hindu Kush. And they would be the northern Indians, and then they were eventually pushed south by the Medes and the Persians. But you see how Japheth's kids are all, again, remember, Gomer was the eldest son. Gomer would have inherited the land around the ark, which is right here. Japheth, all his kids are north of here, all of them. The only ones that south, see, Tabal is actually Tbilisi in Georgia, that's right here. The only ones that migrated south are the children of Javan, which is the Greco-Romans, and they went south through the Black Sea, the Armenian Sea, and then Tyrus. These are where the Trojans come from, and they were also down here, and they competed with Javan. That's where the Trojan War happens. And I believe they started Tyre after that, so I think they would have been the forefathers of the Carthaginians after that. So again, you have all this on very good authority based on, just the sounds of the names, where these people are. But more than any of this, you have this in the Table of Nations. So when this guy yells Rosh, see, he yells Rosh, which he does as a battle cry multiple times in this movie, and you know that he's a Sarmatian. He's a descendant of this Rosh from the Riphean tribe. And this is actually pretty good historical scholarship here. So the entire idea of Gog being King Gyges of Lydia was a hack idea. It literally just came from the fact that Gyges has two G's in his name, and they name it Gyges, and they're completely ignorant of the fact that there's a land named Goguryeo. Okay? So the second thing we want to discern is, what was Rosh a proper name? And the answer is yes, Rosh is a proper name. Go right to Genesis 46, and you see the sons of Belaman were Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, and Rosh. Mupim and Humim and Ard. Okay? This is Rosh. It's spelled the exact same way. And yes, it means head or chief, but it says Rosh, a name of an Israelite and of a foreign nation. Rosh. So this is in the Strong's Concordance. And again, King James, New King James, it doesn't matter what the translation says. What does the original Hebrew say? So the Strong's Concordance is saying it's Rosh, it's the name of an Israelite, that's the son of Benjamin, and of a foreign nation. So there's a foreign nation called Rosh in there. So we look for Hebrew Rosh, and we look for all the uses of Rosh, and it is used a lot to mean chief, because that's what the name means. But remember, names mean chief, okay? Gog is probably an elder-born son of Magog, and Rosh is probably an elder-born son of Riphath, and the nations eventually get named after them. So we see the word Rosh used 540 times in the Bible, and we don't want to get into all these ones, but what we want to get into is Ezekiel. See, and it can mean top, it can mean the head, it can mean the chief. There's a Greek word that is, I think it's protos, which is roughly equivalent. Okay, but in Ezekiel 38, he says, "Son, Ben of Adam, son of Adam, Ben Adam, son of Adam, set your face upon him against Gog, the land of Magog." Rosh. So notice there's two lands, right? Gog, the land of Magog. This is the literal translation of it. Gog, the land of Magog. So Gog is North Korea. Magog would be Mongolia, or modern most of Russia. That's Eastern Russia. And then Rosh, prince of Meshech and Tubal. Okay? Rosh. So Gog, Magog, Rosh. Notice it could mean chief prince. It could mean head prince. But why would you have the redundant head prince, chief prince? It doesn't make sense. Gog, notice there's no ands in here. This is the original Hebrew. So I don't read Hebrew script. If somebody else does, they're welcome to, argue with me, but not Joel Richardson. He doesn't read Hebrew, okay? He's a guy who's following this hack idea that came about in the 60s, that Gyges of Lydia is Gog, and these horrible maps that came out in the Bible since the 60s. Okay, we don't care about that. So it says, "Son of man, set your face against Gog, the land of Magog, Rosh," and see, they can put ands in here. Notice and Tubal. See, So it literally can be translated Gog and the land of Magog and Rosh, prince of Meshech and Tubal. So where's Meshech and Tubal? That's Moscow and that's Tbilisi. Moscow, Tbilisi, Georgia. And this Rosh can be a capital Rosh. Now, notice you have these capitalized here because this this is based on the King James, and King James has it translated as chief prince. Well, which one is it? It can be either. It can be either. But if you know that Rosh, Russia, is over Moscow, Georgia, that's where Stalin came from. And Rosh is the Kiev and Rus. That's the original kingdom that all of Russia came from. And then they ruled over, so Gog, the land of Magog, which is actually ruled by Russia, the prince of Meshech and Tubal. So again, he's the prince of Georgia and Moscow, rules over the land of Magog and Gog. Gog's with them. So literally you have North Korea, Mongolia, Russia, Moscow, and Georgia. That's who you have there. And all of them are tied together linguistically, they're tied together historically, they're tied together on maps, and none of them are in Turkey. They're all to the north of Turkey. Okay? Because Turkey in the east was populated by Assyria, which was a strong nation in Ezekiel's day. They eventually get conquered by the Babylonians by Ezekiel's day. But they were a strong nation that was basically there from the time of Nimrod to the time when they get defeated by the Babylonians. So for about 1,000 years, they're a very strong nation in the east of Turkey. And in the west of Turkey, you have the Hittite Kingdom, which was powerful, and to the west of them were the Lydians. And the Greeks just populated little coastal cities on the coast, because if you read the descendants of Jabin, it says the sons of Jabin, Ben Yavin, Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim. So literally you have Spain and England. I think this is like Crete. You have, this is Cyprus, and this is the island of Rhodes. This is where the Greeks populated, mostly the islands, and then coastal cities, they would plant trading colonies there. And so they didn't start to be powerful until around the time of Alexander the Great and the Persian conflicts with the Greeks and the Spartans in that area. But the Spartans are Danites, okay? That's in the books of the Maccabees. They're Danites, okay? And those were the only people that were south. Those were the only people that made it in Turkey. And then Tyrus had Troy, because Troy was in Turkey, okay? The rest of these guys were all in the north, north of where the Ark was landed. And if you know where the Ark landed, it's in the region of Ararat, which is the far east of Turkey, northeast of Turkey. And then the Javanites spread northeast from there, okay? So again, don't listen to Joel Richardson, you guys, please. Joel Richardson is looking for anything he can to support his theory that Gog is Turkey, because he needs it to be his Islamic empire. Remember. Now, here's Joel Richardson now, okay? He looks pretty cleaned up. He looks kind of scholarly. He's got tons of books, right? And he is running tours to Mount Sinai in Arabia, which is really weird if he's promoting the Islamic Antichrist theory, that the Muslim kingdom of Saudi Arabia would let him run tours to Mount Sinai there. But if you know he's a Jewish shill, he's actually promoting people who are promoting rebuilding the Temple Mount and Christians giving sacrifices there. If you watch Joel Richardson's channel, he's a hack, he's a shill, he's a false teacher, okay? But the reality is back in the early 2000s, Joel Richardson was on Glenn Beck, the Mormons show. And if you look at Joel Richardson's channel, watch this. This symbol, Joel Richardson's symbol, this symbol right here is a Mormon made-up symbol, and it's called the Star of Melchizedek, okay? Well, why does Joel Richardson have a Mormon symbol as his symbol on his website? And the answer is because Joel Richardson was made famous by this guy, Glenn Beck. This was after 9/11. So notice this is the year 2011, okay? Joel Richardson, up until about the past 10 years, was known as Glenn Beck's prophet, okay? Glenn Beck is a Mormon. Joel Richardson's got a Mormon symbol on his website. I don't know if he's personally a Mormon, but he definitely was made famous by Mormon. From Glenn Beck, he went to the televangelists and all your wacky Sid Roth is Supernatural. See, there's Joel Richardson on Sid Roth is Supernatural. He did the circuit with your crazy televangelists, and then he popularized this idea of the Islamic Antichrist. Okay, Joel Richardson is going to have all these books, and every single one of these books is chiming on the same idea that the Antichrist has to be a Muslim. This theory was invented by two people. It was promoted by two people after 9/11. Okay, that's where it came from. It didn't come from the Bible. It didn't come from biblical scholarship. It came from 9/11. It came from Muslim terrorism in 9/11. And all of a sudden, these guys come up with these ideas, and there's really two guys who promoted it. Joel Richardson and Waleed Chabot. Waleed Chabot has been proven to be a Roman Catholic, a hack scholar, and a fraud. Okay, I think he was involved in embezzlement and stuff like that. So Joel Richardson has distanced himself from him, and Joel Richardson is now the sole voice of this Islamic Antichrist theory. But unfortunately, through people like this guy Nelson Waters, who Revealing Truth is promoting, he follows Joel Richardson. And there's a lot of these people that are following Joel Richardson, and what they're doing is they're merging these two bad theories together. One is the pre-wrath theory. Okay, I have talked to leading scholars in the pre-wrath camp. I mean, you go to the pre-wrath movie, they write 7 pre-trib problems. The guys in this movie, okay, these are the leading scholars in this movie. I've met 2 of them, corresponding with a third. There's only one of them I haven't met. These guys cannot answer my questions. Alan Kirshner has a copy of my book. I asked him 4 questions about Gog Magog, Luke 17, and the 2 witnesses. He couldn't answer any of them. He's a PhD, and his PhD is basically in debunking the pre-trib theory. He doesn't have a good theory of his own, and he knows it, okay? But him and then Chris White is the other guy. Marv Rosenthal came up with the theory, but this is Charles Cooper. He promotes it. I haven't met Charles. This guy, I forget his name. His name is Ryan something. He's a pastor from Minnesota. So again, I've tried to reach out to these guys. They cannot answer my questions. They're really not that great of scholars. You notice it's the pre-wrath. See the pre-wrath rapture, and this is what they do: is they spend all their time debunking pre-trib, and then they put a really sloppy theory in its place. That is the whole pre-wrath camp in a nutshell. They put all their efforts into debunking the pre-trib theory. They ignore mid-trib. They completely ignore it. And I've asked them, what about mid-trib? And here's what this guy's answer to me. This was a conference with him and Alan Kirshner. His answer to me about mid-trib, and I gave him a copy of my book. I said, what about the mid-trib position? He said, well, nobody believes in the mid-trib position. That was his answer. That was his whole answer. That was his scholarly answer to the mid-trib position. And I asked him about Luke 17, and he said, well, Luke 17 is not supposed to be talking about the last days. This is Jesus talking about his second coming, and one taken and one left when the Jews flee Jerusalem before the Olivet Discourse. But he said that's not supposed to be talking about the last days. He had no answer. He didn't even think to consider Luke 17. And Alan Kirshner admitted he did not study Luke 17 at all to try to incorporate it in his theories. Alan Kirshner didn't study Gog Magog. They had no answer for the 7-year period at the end of Gog Magog. They never tried to align Joel and Revelation and Gog Magog because they all align perfectly. Revelation 6, Joel, and Ezekiel 38 and 39 all align perfectly to the beginning of Daniel's 70th week. Okay? These guys didn't bother to do that. And then Chris White, I've been corresponding with him for years. And again, they're just stuck in this theory. And their whole theory is based on one thing alone. If you guys are pre-wrath, the whole linchpin, the whole thing falls apart when you take away this one thing. When the wicked in Revelation 6 go underground, hide from the wrath of the Lamb, they say that's when the wrath of the Lamb starts. Now, Jesus said it would take them unawares. They would not see it coming. So how would they know to go run and hide underground? Because the wrath of the Lamb is coming. And the answer is they wouldn't. They're deceived. They think the wrath of the Lamb is coming, but in reality, the Antichrist is coming. But they think that. Why? Because they're deceived. Okay? And that is what this whole theory is predicated on. You take away this one idea that, wait a minute, the wicked aren't supposed to know when Jesus is coming. It says in Revelation 16, right, 10 chapters later, I come as a thief at the Battle of Armageddon. They didn't see it coming. So how do these guys see it coming in Revelation 6? The answer is they don't. They're deceived. They think it's the Lord coming, but they go underground early. They miss Armageddon, okay? So you guys have to get rid of this theory. It's such a bad theory, and it's based on excuse my language, piss poor scholarship. Piss poor. Most eschatology, so-called eschatology buffs, are horrible history scholars, horrible linguistics and etymology scholars, horrible geographical scholars. Where if the Mongols and the Koreans and the Chinese and the Turks, which are all in Central and Northern and Northeastern Asia, are not the descendants of Magog and Togarmah and these other people, then where did they come from?
And the dwarfs just spring out of holes in the ground.
Did they pop out of holes in the ground? Where did they come from? You have to have an answer for where these people came from. And these guys are not history scholars. These guys are booksellers. That's all Joel Richardson is. He's a bookseller, and now he's a tour seller, putting himself out there as this anointed pastor. And here's the thing. If you follow him, here's where he's going to lead you. He's going to lead you to sacrificing on the Temple Mount when the temple's rebuilt. These two guys, which Joel Richardson promoted on his channel, this guy claims to be a Messianic Jew. This guy claims to be a Christian. They're liars. These guys are Israeli intelligence. I promise you, these guys. This guy is actually a rabbi, and this guy is actually a military. He's Israeli military. Okay, these two guys who have this thing, the Temple Mount report, are promoting the idea that when the temple is rebuilt, Christians can sacrifice in the temple. You listen to this guy speak, he sounds just like a Jewish rabbi. You just listen to his inflections and his tones and stuff like that. He literally sounds like an Ashkenazi Jewish rabbi. And he's claiming that he's getting a Bible degree and he's a Christian. These guys are liars. These guys are straight up Jewish shills, okay? And Joel Richardson's promoting these guys who are promoting the idea that Christians should give sacrifices on the Temple Mount. That's where Joel Richardson's theory is going. And the Jews are aligning with the Arabs around Neam, around Sinai, and around the Temple Mount. They're going to lead a world pilgrimage here, which is what the two witnesses are going to speak out against for 42 months. The whole world's going to be going to sacrifice in Jerusalem, just like in ancient times, just like in Jesus' day. That's what's going to happen. And the Temple Mount Report and Joel Richardson and FAI Ministries are all in on it. They're all Jewish shills, okay? You guys need to understand, Jewish rabbis have been promoting for years. Look up Hildebrew. Hildebrew is another ministry. They've been promoting for years that God created Islam and Christianity as a means to get people basically integrated back towards Judaism. They're teaching that Judaism and the temple is the real and Jesus was just a shadow. That's what these guys are teaching. Okay? So please, Revealing Truth, stop promoting Nelson Waters, stop promoting Joel Richardson. Nelson Waters, stop promoting Joel Richardson. Okay? Stop promoting the Islamic Antichrist theory. Stop promoting the theory that Gog is Turkey. Okay? It's bad scholarship, you guys. I don't know what to tell you. This guy was created by basically Sid Roth and Glenn Beck. Okay? And now he's world famous. He's world famous because he's running tours to Mount Sinai in Arabia. He's working with the Kurds in Arabia. He's got a following on his YouTube channel of only 66,000, surprisingly. But FAI he's got, and then he's got these other people promoting his theories. Okay, and then he's got, John Haller is promoting his stuff. Chris White is promoting his stuff. And all of this, remember, the whole Islamic Antichrist theory came from him and Walid Chabot basically reading Islamic eschatology and saying, oh, the Mahdi must be the Antichrist. Maybe the Mahdi is the Antichrist. But why are you reading Islamic eschatology and then trying to implant it on top of the Bible to dictate how the Bible should be translated? The Muslims were Gnostics. They didn't understand the Bible at all. They were Gnostics. They had all these twisted ideas that came through oral tradition that they bought into. Okay, so don't buy into this stuff. Remember, Rosh. This is the Gawk Turks. Okay, the Gawk Turks are Gog. Okay, in the Book of Jubilees, they name Gog. They tell you that the land of Japheth was divided from the Don River to the northeast to the land of Gog. That's the far northeast. Okay, that's North Korea. It's as far north as you would go, and after that, yeah, as the ice receded, they would go north from there. Okay, but that's who Gog is. Gog is North Korea. So please, you guys, please ignore this bad scholarship. Please ignore the idea that the reason Turkey is against Russia and starting to be pro-Israel, and Russia starting to be anti-Israel, is because geographically it makes sense. Turkey and Russia were rivals over Constantinople because Constantinople was granted to the Russians by the last king of Constantinople before the Turks sacked it. This is 1400 AD. Okay, this is 600 years ago. If you went to school for history, you know this. This is common knowledge. Take a Western Civ class. Take a Eastern European or just a European history class or a Western Civ class. You are going to learn that the Byzantine Empire inherited the Roman Empire at Constantinople, where Constantine was, and it fell to the Turks in 1492, the same year that Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And he tried to get anyone from Europe to help him lift the siege by the Turks, and he couldn't. So he married his daughter off to, I think it was Peter the Great. It was either Peter the Great or Ivan the Terrible of Russia. And that's where the first czars come from. They inherited the title of Caesar from Constantinople. You guys need to know your history. You guys need to know your history. You need to know your etymology. Listen, I am not a master scholar. I don't have a PhD in anything. I don't have a master's degree in anything. I took a bachelor's level course in social studies, okay? That's what my degree is in, is social studies. But I read. You guys, if you just took a community college level Western Civ class, you would know history better than these hack scholars who are just out to sell books on your ignorance. Okay? Don't follow these guys. Follow the Bible. Follow history. Okay? So I hope you guys are blessed by this teaching. I hope this will raise some of the ignorance, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Batman out. Peace.
Peace, I'm out. I'm Batman.